I went in and added some of my own images into the app, some landscapes I had done recently, pictures of the cats. This is a sunrise that I took over on Briar Hill Road driving to school. It was just so pretty, I had to pull over and safely get out, kind of get up on the car to take the photo. So I'm doing my cropping. I want to make sure that the sun is not right dead center. And then the next thing I usually do is I hit auto just to give myself a baseline. I usually don't just hit auto and save. I hit auto and then I hit light and I start to go from there. I start to adjust my exposure, my contrast, highlights. All right, we want to have details in our highlights, details in our shadows. We want to have black and white in the image, but we don't want too much of it. And to be honest, when I finished editing this, I realized I needed to go back and adjust shadows, got a little bit too dark, little not enough detail. So use your fingers to zoom in and see what you are doing. This part right here, white balance. Okay, white balance falls under color. Color has temperature. If you have lights on in your house at night, you're probably going to have more of an orange yellow tint to your photos because a lot of our light bulbs. Just like with exposure, I check auto to see if it looks better than the as shot. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Okay? Sometimes it gives you more options than just auto or as shot. You're going to adjust the temperature. That's usually the big adjustment. Is it too warm or is it too cool? When it comes to the tint, we usually don't end up changing that a ton. All right, the next sliders are vibrance and saturation. Saturation is just gonna blow all the colors super, super crazy. Vibrance is gonna increase them, but not the ones that are found in skin tones. So it's to boost the blues and the greens. And that's because people were boosting the saturation and making people's skin look really weird. If your grass isn't exactly the right color, people probably won't notice. If your skin is the wrong color, people notice. So now if I click on mix, this lets me grab individual colors and I can adjust maybe what's appearing red in the image should actually be more orange or should actually be more yellow. That's what hue is. Hue is another word for color. So there's a lot of different greens, there's a lot of different blues. So you can decide, is it a more purpley blue? Is it a more green blue? Now in a photo like this, it can be very tempting to bump up my tint because look at all the green in my image. So what you want to do when you're adjusting white balance, if I'm adjusting my tint, I'm not going to look at the greens. I'm going to look at the ground. I'm going to look at the sky. I'm going to look at the sun. I'm not going to focus on the greens. If I want the greens themselves to pop, I'll go to mix if I want to pop just an individual color. Saturation, we said, boom, how strong is that color? If every color has the saturation boosted, the whole image is just going to feel like, oh, neon. If we selectively decide, ooh, I really want to bring out some of these oranges and a little bit of violets going on in the sky, maybe tone down some of the other colors, then you start to create more of a focal point. Luminance. Luminance has to do with how much light is hitting that object. All right, so the next menu is effects. And for some of these, we want to zoom in. So our texture and our clarity, if you guys look at my screen, ugh, gross, right? There's some weirdness that happens to our pixels when we over sharpen. So we don't want to do that. Dehaze tends to take some of the atmospheric haze out of the image. And honestly, I probably, after I dehazed, should have gone back and double checked my light and my color. That is something I'll probably go back and do on this image, because now what has happened is my color got really awesome. My sky colors look a lot more like what they actually did when I, saw with my eyes and said, that's worth pulling over on my way to work. So vignetting, depending on the lens you're using, how long it is, it's going to create a darkening or a lightening. Here, we're digitally adding a vignette. We don't want to make it those like we're looking down a toilet paper tube or like our pinhole photos. So we do want to make sure that we go down and adjust the feather, kind of fade it out a little bit. Grain is found in photographic film. Sometimes you see it in older movies or photos. You will see little speckles or dots. When it's a digital image, we call that noise. Sometimes some of our filters add grain to make something look old. Whenever we're working in detail, sharpness, noise, you have to zoom in. If you do not zoom in, you're not going to actually see what is going to happen to your image. Now, can you all see the specklies in the sky? You guys see these specklies in my clouds here? And you might think, oh yeah, those are just pixels. No, that's static that happens whenever we have electronics. Okay, that static creates noise, just like the grain, and we have to take it out. So under the details tab, we have noise reduction and we have color noise reduction. Color noise happens when it's really dark. We might see extra speckles in our images, and you guys might want to go back in your camera roll and look at some photos that you may have taken when it was dark or you were inside and the lighting wasn't great. When you zoom in, you might see little red and green speckles, red, green, or blue. So with noise reduction, what you want to do is you want to bump it up, see if it makes a difference, and then if it does, back it up to the point where it makes a difference. We don't want to leave it all the way over, because what it does is when it takes that noise out, it'll also suck some of the color and some of the sharpness out, which is why it's on the same slider, the same menu as sharpening. And then as far as geometry, let's say you're taking a bird's eye shot straight down and it didn't end up quite straight down. It ended up a little bit off and at an angle. The geometry will allow you to straighten out your image. If you're trying to take a photograph of, say, an artwork, and it's tilted a little and you want it to be, or a building, something like that, this is a way of guiding it upright. All right, so I'm about to save this and look at the before and afters. I selected export to files because instead of just sending it to my camera roll and letting it pick all of the options, I don't want to save over my original. So I want to choose that it's a JPEG. I want the largest available dimensions. I'm going to up that image quality. This is where if I want to include a watermark, I can. Now, for our general class stuff, I wouldn't do that, but if you're posting it straight to social media, absolutely, watermark your stuff. If you go to more options, it's going to let me name the file so that, again, it doesn't save over my original. So I'm going to change image quality to 100. I don't care, Instacart, about your things. Here's a watermark. And so I go back and I decide, I don't want the watermark. But instead, maybe I do. I don't know, going back and forth about it, moving it around. Have location info off. Okay. File naming, you can change the name of it. Output sharpening. Is this a photo for print? Is this a photo for screen? Or do you just want no sharpening for either because you're not sure? If I'm going to share it on Instagram, I'm going to throw a watermark on it and I'm going to sharpen for screen. If I know I'm printing it, I don't want a watermark on my print, and I can select matte or glossy paper. And then it's going to save to my camera roll. And then from there, I can send it to my Google Drive. I can email it to myself. In this case, I airdropped it to my other computer. Now I went back in and did another export, and this is where I added a watermark. Great. Went to more options and sharpened for screen, and then I put it on Instagram right from the app.